So what do you do when the God Butcher only kills one god in a movie? Why, you have a podcast to complain about it. That's what you do. This is Scott Reed, and I am joined on this episode by
Mike Atchison
and Chad Schubert.
And this is episode 135 of the Campus Comics Cast. This is the official podcast for Muddy Monster Comics, located at 1422 Walnut Street in Murfreesboro, Illinois. Now, we are recording on July 21st. And assuming I can possibly get this episode out tomorrow, you'll have one day to make it over to Murfreesboro for July 23rd for the Muddy Monster Comic Con 2022. And you'll have a chance to meet Catherine Sutherland and Nakia Baris at the shop from 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock. And then, of course, Berg Comics, along with several other vendors, will be at I'm just going to call it the Town Center, selling our wares, so you can kind of double dip there and see some Power Rangers, buy some comics. And then there's also some other great things going on in Murfreesboro, and all the details will be at the shop for you to find out. So real quick note in news, as we record this July 21st, Sue Grant, who is the wife of Alan Grant, posted on her Facebook page, and today again is July 21st, that Alan Grant had passed at some time this morning. Alan Grant is I think he's Scottish, but he is probably best known for his work on books like 2000 AD, Judge Dredd, and then I think he had quite a few issues of Batman under his belt as well. And then he created some characters like Victor Zsasz and Ratcatcher and Anarchy, to name just a couple of the characters there that he has created. So I've read some Alan Grant stuff. I've read a fair amount of Judge Dredd, and I think I was reading a little bit of Batman during that run of his on Batman. But I don't know, Mike, you got anything to add or say about Alan Grant?
Oh, well, I mean, I was familiar with the name with his Batman run, and I didn't ever delve into the whole Judge Dredd or the 2000 AD stuff, even though we all know that all comics start and end with 2000 AD. But his, I did actually get had that Anarchy run that he wrote at some point, and that wasn't bad, really. But I can't tell you, other than I remember the storyline Contagion, I really liked. Say it 3 times. Contagion. Yeah, it's not a word you normally say out loud. But I really dug that storyline, and yeah, another great creator that's that we're going to be missing.
Shad, do you have much Alan Grant experience in your reading?
I don't. I'm sure that I've come across some of his stuff in my readings. I was looking through my CLZ app actually and searched his name, and it looks like there's a couple of collections that I have of Batman that he's in. I guess he even did some the animated adventures, because I've got some trades of the Batman animated adventures stuff in there, and then and I really like. I think Victor Zsasz is a really cool character, and it looks like Ventriloquist was another character he co-created on, according to the Wikipedia page. And so, yeah, some decent characters that have come out of his work for sure.
Yeah, I think the main thing that I remember is that first 5 issues of Batman Legends of the Dark Knight, which introduced Zsasz to the world. And that was like the first, it's like, what was it, like the first new Batman title in like however many years, because it's from Detective and right. Batman. That's when we got the trend of having 3 or more books of Batman. That all started then. So
it's all his fault.
As I would say, well, let's blame DC for that. Let's not blame Alan Grant for that. But yeah, I guess the farther we get along in this, that's what's going to be announcing this more and more. So 70. Oh gosh, I think it was 73. Okay, yeah, 73. I meant to write his age, and I didn't. And they did not release a cause of death. Not that really matters, but yeah. All right. So Got to calm myself. Are we ready to talk about Thor: Love and Thunder?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you give an objective review? That's the
Okay.
question.
I can, if nothing else, at least read this plot synopsis that I have
Objectively.
from IMDb. Fortunately, the eye rolls don't come across on the on audio, which is probably going to be good. But so what I'll do is I've got this. They have it broken up in paragraphs. I'll read about 3 paragraphs, and then we'll kind of stop in some comments, and then we'll keep going on from there. So, all right. So we ready to start this?
You bet.
I'll get my last sigh out of the way. Okay. Gore, the last of his people, spends his days striving to survive on a barren desert with his daughter Love. He prays to his god Rapu for help, but Love soon dies of starvation. Just as he begins to hear a voice calling out to him in the distance, Gore discovers an oasis where he finds Rapu, who had killed the latest wielder of an ancient weapon known as All Black the Necro Sword. Rapu makes fun of Gore for his helplessness and refuses to provide any assistance. Feeling betrayed, Gore claims the Necro Sword and beheads him and vows for the elimination of all gods. Thor, continuing his adventures with the Guardians of the Galaxy, responding to distress calls across the universe while working to get back in shape. However, Thor remains discontent with where he is in life and intends to retire. An influx of distress calls regarding Gore emerge, one of them being from Sif, who had hunted him down, him being Gore. Thor and Korg respond to Sif's call, parting ways with the Guardians, who leave to respond to the others. They find a defeated Sif with an arm severed, who warns them that Gore will attack New Asgard next. Meanwhile, Dr. Jane Foster undergoes treatment for stage 4 cancer. Efforts to research for a cure prove futile, and she begins to lose hope, but Foster becomes inspired to travel to New Asgard in hopes that their magic can eliminate the cancer. As Thor has unknowingly enchanted it to protect Foster while they were together, Mjolnir becomes drawn to her presence, fusing itself back together and imbuing her with the powers of the mighty Thor. All right, that's the first 3 paragraphs. Let's talk a little bit about some of the things there. So,
Chad, I felt like I was there. What about you?
I was like, yeah, I remember all these parts. This makes sense.
What a great synopsis.
Yeah, well, thank you, IMDb.
What a great reading.
Yeah, thank you, IMDb, for that synopsis. So, okay, first thing I'm going to talk about is the complete, once again, waste of one of the main support characters of Sif in this movie. We have one scene. We don't get to see her fight. She's already beaten. And this is obviously going to be my huge beef with this movie, is everything in this movie is turned into a joke. Sif is dying, and Thor's making jokes about the fact, well, you didn't actually die in battle, so you're not going to be able to get into Valhalla because you had to die in battle to get into Valhalla. It's like, really? This is like one of the former loves of his life. And that's the respect that they are giving this particular character. It's almost, because it's so in your face, worse than what it was with like the Warriors 3 in Ragnarok, where they were just dispatched with very, very little fanfare. So I mean, we're off to a bad start pretty early in this movie.
I thought that line delivery was more in the like, well, you can't die because you're not gonna, like, was a playful banter between the two of them, like, you got to stay alive and you've got to get through this because you didn't die in battle, so you're not going to get to go to Valhalla anyways.
Well, you can think that all you want, but I think you're probably wrong. I think it was clearly played for the joke, So, I mean, she even gets that sigh there, and we don't see her in the rest of the movie either,
Right?
So.
Yeah. I wonder if that is because that actor, she didn't want.
Jamie Alexander, is that right?
Yeah, like maybe she was in something else, or she wasn't able to meet schedule for that. Like, I wonder what the story behind that is.
Well, I don't know, but I mean, she took time out to go film for Loki. And she was in a TV series, Blind Spot.
Yeah,
and that show ended. So I'm not.
Yeah, that's been done for quite a while. Yeah,
I'm not aware of her having any other obligations. But still, just to dispatch with such an important character, I think so. In a throwaway scene, it really, really bothered me.
That's a theme that will be followed throughout the movie with other characters that should get more prominence. Which I'll leave them to you to bring up. But I actually kind of forgot she had that scene in this movie.
Yeah. Now we should probably back up to the very beginning. And Christian Bale as Gore, the parts that we got of him, I thought were for the most part all
Yes.
very good to great. I didn't really feel let down by his performance at all. There was one scene later where it borderline on getting a little silly when he was talking to the kids. We can get into that later. But other than that, I thought that he, had the makings to be a particularly good villain.
I think he lived up to the reputation that he has as an actor. That scene with the kids was more writing. I mean, that was
oh yeah, absolutely
his acting. But he was a compelling villain. I think he had a good reason for being a villain. And that always a good sign of a good villain is one that you can sympathize with for what he's doing or she's doing. So they got that part right out of a lot of things they maybe didn't, but that part was right.
And then the last thing I have for this section is just, I had again some hopes that's like, okay, we're gonna get the Jason Aaron, Jane Foster Thor. And it kind of, we got that from the teasers and the trailer. And here early on, it looked like that was basically the character that we were going to get, and they kept some of that story. But I'll save this to the end. I'll say my big comment about that towards the end. But it's not quite the worthy Jane Foster that we get. So I'll leave that.
I will say, and this may not be a good comment, but I liked how much Guardians of the Galaxy we got. I like that there was enough to give you a kind of a fill-in of where that story had been without giving it a whole movie. It felt like maybe 10 minutes at most we got of the here's the adventures they've been on. Here's a little bit of the relationship they've all got, and then we send them off. And it felt like it didn't it stayed the right amount of time. The Guardians of the Galaxy stuff did.
Yeah, other than the nonsense scene about focusing on the ones you love and Chris Hemsworth trying to stare longingly into Chris Pratt's eyes, through that entire scene. It's just like, but no, you are right. And what's really good about that scene is now we know we don't have to put up with Thor in the next Guardians of the Galaxy movie. They've split ways. So that is excellent as far as I'm concerned.
It's almost like but I get what you're saying, Shad. It's almost like they had to put the Guardians in the first part of the movie to kind of tie it into the previous Marvel movies.
Yeah,
he had left with them. Yeah,
there was a mandatory scene that had to exist.
Yeah, and it felt mandatory to me. It felt like, okay, we're going to show everybody, but you got all those good characters, and they were just, I don't know, they were just there and reading lines from a script. It wasn't really. It didn't do much for me, but I get why they had to have it in there because they had to. That was the connecting piece between,
right?
Whatever was at Endgame to this movie.
It was another failed opportunity because they could have been active participants. Instead, they're just like fodder until Thor decides, okay, I guess I should go fight this battle now. It was kind of.
And the worst scene wasn't that whole gaze into the eyes. It was to me, it was dealing with the alien race. They were supposed to be protecting their temple.
Yeah,
and you knew it was going to happen.
Oh,
and
yeah,
it was just Thor and his pontificating and over the top. This is what we do, and we're going to do it together. And I'm like, oh man, this is just. I know he's trying to do it for laughs, but it made it worse because you want sort of something inspiring from a hero like him.
Yeah, and the jokes that they were nonstop, but they were all so predictable. All the jokes were so predictable in this. Anyway, okay, so Thor leaves Sif. That night, Gore uses the Necro Sword to swarm New Asgard with shadow monsters. Thor, Korg, and Sif arrive to confront them. I don't remember Sif confronting them, as does King Valkyrie and Foster, who Thor is surprised to see. While they were able to repel the monsters, Gore escaped with Asgard's children, including Heimdall's son Axel. Thor communicates with Axel and deduces that the children are in the Shadow Realm. Knowing that Gore's strength would be at its peak there, Thor, Foster, Valkyrie, and Korg travel to Omnipotent City to warn Zeus of Gore and ask for an army to help him fight. Unconvinced that Gore is a threat to omnipotent city, Zeus instead has Thor captured, forcing the others to intervene and fend off Zeus's men. In the scuffle, Zeus uses Thunderbolt to destroy Korg's body. Only his face remains intact, although that is enough for him to survive. Excuse me. Enraged, Thor uses the Thunderbolt to impale Zeus in the chest, which Valkyrie steals as the group escapes to confront Gore in the Shadow Realm. On the way, Thor learns of Foster's cancer diagnosis, and the two rekindle their relationship. Upon arrival, they attempt to locate the children, only to realize they had fallen for a trap. Gore intended to take Stormbreaker in order to utilize the Bifrost Bridge to access Eternity, where he can wish for the extinction of the gods. They battle Gore and his shadow monsters once more, but are forced to flee back to New Asgard once Valkyrie and Foster are weakened. Before Stormbreaker can be transported across the Bifrost, Gore steals it. Thor is informed that the effects of Mjolnir are aggravating Foster's cancer, and he urges her to stay behind to recover. Valkyrie is also unable to continue fighting, leaving the Thunderbolt in Thor's possession so that he can fight Gore again. All right. Gotta say it. Hated Mario Zeus. It's like I had a Nintendo character up there acting as, the god Zeus. It was so ridiculous.
And it wasn't just that it was, well, the accent reminded you of Mario, but it was clearly an Italian or Latin accent. Uh-huh. But Zeus is Greek. So if they wanted to say that, okay, this was Jupiter, the Roman version of Zeus, okay, maybe. Still would have been kind of hokey, but yeah, that was definitely in the cons column for me. What I was a waste.
I would agree with that one.
Okay, all right. I mean, it's a cool concept to have all of the pantheon of all the different religions and all those gods in one location. That overall that concept's pretty cool, but the jokey joke just continued, and it kind of diminished the effect that you could have gotten from that segment of the movie. And I'll also say Asgard on Earth. Mm-hmm. That it shouldn't be a sideshow. It shouldn't be a summer camp.
It's like you're reading my notes, Mike.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yep. No,
it's like,
you don't like that it's a tourist attraction kind of a thing?
No, man, that is not at all. I mean, I would say that would be like, we need to get them UN status, their own, some, maybe Sweden or Norway or whatever the heck they're at, gives them, they partition it off and gives them some sort of status. I mean, that would be great to have some Asgardians on Earth, and they kind of turned it into this, I don't know, like you said, a tourist trap.
And what was bad about that is that the Asgardians adapt to like clothing styles and such on Earth. It would really be the other way around. If that were to happen, then people, coming to Asgard would be dressing as Asgardians and doing all the things like that. And instead, Asgard knew about Midgard prior to this, and they never adopted our clothing style. But now all of a sudden, because they're on the planet, they change how they dress.
Yeah.
That's a nitpicky thing, but it's just like it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. If they just wanted to be able to, put, Valkyrie in a suit, as opposed to her wearing her traditional, costume, it's just kind of like,
And I'm going to minimize my comments that are negative, because I don't want this to come across as, I mean, this show actually got good audience ratings. I mean, some people like this.
Well,
it was 68% for critics, even. If I'm not mistaken.
But that's low for a Marvel movie. Okay. Very low for a Marvel movie.
All right, yeah, but that's pretty high for DC movies. Maybe I'm used to, my bar is lower.
Maybe, I don't know. To me, here I'm gonna equate this with something that you could probably understand. Do you remember back in, this had to have been the late 70s? I only have a vague recollection of this, but they had that Justice League roast TV show that was on like prime time. Do you remember this? This would have been
Mm.
post Adam West Batman. Like, I think he was Batman on it.
Is
And
it
they
called
had
League of Superheroes or something
I
like that?
can't remember it, but they were all, it was like live action.
Mm-hmm.
And it was,
Yeah, no.
and ultimately it kind of, oh really? Wow, okay. So
I've seen online. I've seen the Justice League movie, but it was all the Justice League international characters. You know, like Blue Beetle and Fire and Ice and stuff
well,
like
this would have
that.
been in the late 70s probably. So
Yeah, I haven't
okay, all
seen
right.
that.
Well, okay. Well, anyway, it goes back to them making them. It's like playing it for jokes as opposed to trying to play
Yeah.
it for something a little bit serious. So
Hmm.
okay, let's keep going.
It's called
Unconvinced.
Legends
Yes.
of the Superheroes.
Okay.
In
Oh, I have heard of
1979.
that title, but Shad didn't really speak on this middle part here, so maybe we should let Shad speak
Yeah. Oh yeah. Go ahead.
because
I
Shad
mean,
may have some positivity.
I'm trying to think of what we just went over because
We're,
um
we're at Omnipotent City
oh yeah,
and the attack
Th-
on Asgard and those
yes.
scenes. Yeah.
I like the new Asgard feel. I'm on the opposite side of it. I could totally see where you get aliens coming in. I mean, because they're aliens. In this kind of scenario, aliens land on Earth. They set up a little spot. They're gonna adapt the culture. They're gonna be into the rock and roll. They're gonna be into the clothes. They're gonna, especially the kids, are gonna be into it. It's a totally, because that they're growing up with that as their stuff. They're not growing up with Asgard as
Well, but
their
don't forget that they've known about Midgard all their lives
but the
already.
kids haven't. The kids are in their highly influential time of their life.
Well, kids, they could be hundreds of years old and still be kids since they're
Well, now
Asgard.
you're just making up rules.
You're right, Shad. I'm
You're-
with you on this, man.
you're
You be
reaching
positive.
a little bit there.
Yes, yeah. Don't fall into the curmudgeon trap.
I won't. I can't. But I agree with you. Zeus was not my favorite part of Omnipotent City. I think that it was played super silly. And what we all need to remember is this is a sequel to Thor Ragnarok. So if you didn't like Ragnarok, you're not gonna like Love and Thunder. And that I think is key to this. Is this isn't a sequel to Thor 1 or Thor 2. This is a sequel to Ragnarok. So the jokes are going to be more of the same of that caliber. And the characters are going to develop in that same way. So I think what we saw was more of that. I do feel like the humor is at some points misdirected, or it doesn't know who it's for. Is it for kids? Is it for adults? It feels like it's a very funny for everyone who just likes silly humor, but then it gets very adult at times. Like the cursing gets adult, and some of the conversations are. So that is a little bit like, well, what are we aiming for specifically in there? But other than that, I like how Omnipotent City ended up as a scene. I liked where the story is taking us and how they are building the relationship between Thor and Jane and putting that back together. It all feels, Jane's story feels up until this point very natural and good way to bring her back into the story after kind of missing for a while. And so up until this point, it's like, okay, yeah, this is a really cool story for her specifically. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
You were talking about Rotten Tomato scores. So, okay. So, Love and Thunder, the reviewer score is a 67, the audience score is a 78. Okay. Now, compare that to Ragnarok, which I also think is a terrible movie. It had a reviewer score of 93 and an audience score of 87. Now, my favorite MCU movie is Winter Soldier, which has a 90 reviewer score and a 92 audience score. So just throwing that out there.
Yeah. Well,
Okay, so go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's subjective. I mean, largely. I mean, there are people that are going to enjoy that humorous. I mean, I enjoyed the Winter Soldier. It's in my top 2 or 3 Marvel films. But yeah, I see what you're saying.
All right. Last third of the movie here. At the center of the universe, Gore begins opening Eternity's gate with Stormbreaker. Thor arrives and imbues the children with the power of Thor, giving them enough strength to overcome the remaining shadow monsters. Gore gains the upper hand against Thor. Having sensed his distress, Foster decides to wield Mjolnir, again despite her weakened condition, and join the fight. Thor gives Foster ample time to use Mjolnir to shatter the Necrosword into pieces, dooming herself and Gore. Thor recovers Stormbreaker and has the children use it to return home, but they cannot stop Gore from entering eternity. Thor calls out to Gore and pleads for him to choose love over death as he rushes to Foster's side, their love reminding him of the love he had for his daughter, thus deciding to use his wish to resurrect love. Foster soon succumbs to the cancer, vanishing into Valhalla. Thor accepts Gore's request to take custody of love before he dies from the Necrosword's curse. In the aftermath, a statue of Foster as the mighty Thor is erected in New Asgard. Sif and Valkyrie begin training the children in combat, yes, I remember that scene, so we did see Sif later on. Sorry about that. While Korg's body fully regenerates as he seeks to produce an offspring. Thor starts to raise love as his own daughter, entrusting her with Stormbreaker while he wields Mjolnir into battle. The two begin traveling the galaxy, offering assistance to whoever needs it, becoming known as Love and Thunder. And then we got two scenes at the end, a mid-credit scene where we have a recuperating Zeus sends his son Hercules to kill Thor, and the final scene, Jane Foster arrives at the gates of Valhalla, where Heimdall welcomes her and thanks her for helping save his son. All right. I'm just going to start going through the rest of my notes. So
Yeah.
Okay, so all right. This is what I officially want to call the first Marvel meme movie. Because I feel like the majority of the jokes were taken from online memes, and it's like, oh, let's put it into a movie. You know, the screaming goats being the best example of this. That was annoying when it was a meme, and it was terrible in this movie. It was the most irritating thing about this movie, and there's a lot of irritating things, but this is the number one. And like the whole love triangle between Mjolnir and Stormbreaker and Thor, that's just like that meme online, you know, where the guy looking back because the girl's passing and he's got the girl by his side. It's like it's literally a meme movie. It's just to the point of absurd. It's like Taika Waititi couldn't be bothered to write his own script. I know, I'll go online, find all the memes, try to make jokes out of those, and put them into a Thor movie. And I really feel like that's what he did. Tell me I'm wrong.
I hadn't looked at it like that, but when you use that comparison to that meme about, you know, the current boyfriend looking at the, you know, the girl that's passing by, yeah, I can see that.
Which, by the way, is from a John Byrne comic book.
Really?
So right? She was She-Hulk. Yeah. You have a character named the God Butcher, and how many gods did we see him kill in this movie?
Saw a lot of corpses afterwards, right? And you saw like as when Thor arrived late, and when the Guardians were getting the distress calls, you saw a lot of images of the aftermath.
We just saw battles, but we didn't actually see, and we didn't see Gore doing anything, you know. So the only god.
How many do you want to see him butcher?
Two. It would be nice because the first one is where he's starting. So let's see him having progressed and take on somebody that's not defeating that was, you know, something silly. Make him feel like he's a threat. You never get the feeling that he's a threat in this. It's kind of like the same problem with Ragnarok. You never felt like there was any big distress going on. They feel like they're going to lose their home, and there was no, you know, it just didn't feel like they even really cared that much. You know, it's just like he's just going around for something to do.
I think I looked at it as the destruction and the aftermath and the corpses that were, and the giant, whatever the one god was that he had killed that was laying there that you saw. And those were kind of like I saw it more as like looking at the destruction he left behind. Not that you sat there and watched him hack a bunch of gods to death, but
it again, I think it would give us more time with Christian Bale in this movie, which I think it definitely needed. So I feel like that was a missed opportunity, and just, you know, have some cool fight scenes, you know, because it felt like that was kind of lacking in this. All right. I already talked about Sif being completely wasted. Already complained about the goat meme. I'm just going through my. Okay. This really bothers me. All right. In the Jason Aaron story run, Jane Foster becomes Thor because she is worthy to wield the hammer. In this movie, she gets to be Thor because Thor tells the hammer, take care of her. So she's carrying the hammer, not because she's worthy to hold the hammer, but because Thor has this new ability all of a sudden where he can give his power to whoever he wants to and share his power with whoever he wants to. So we have a Jane Foster that's not worthy. We have a Jane Foster that is still being looked out for by Thor. And that really, really bothers me a lot.
I mean, you could say that's a fanboy complaint, but I
Okay,
get
I'll
where you
accept
like.
that.
Yeah, and I do the same thing with DC movies. It's yeah, I don't think the power of Mjolnir
Mjolnir.
is something that can be bequeathed upon something or someone. Uh, it served the purpose of the story. It just they couldn't, I don't know. I forget what happens in the Aaron run, how she deemed herself or how she was deemed to be worthy. Otherwise, it was pretty
She was
true. I
just
mean,
was. She just was.
yeah, she just was. So
Yeah.
they could have probably done it, but she was. I mean, she went looking for what caused her to go to the new Asgard to.
She was looking for a cure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then she just had that thought. Well,
Mhm.
maybe if science isn't going to work, it's against
To
her
magic.
nature, but
Yeah.
let's go look at magic.
Yeah.
I don't think she was going to Asgard to think that she could pick up Mjolnir and pick it up. Because remember
No.
in the Dark World, they, there was their magic that basically discovered whenever she had and I forgot whatever the red force that was in her that would end up being part of one of the Infinity Stones. They were able, so she knew that they had medicine that they didn't have on Earth. So I don't think she went looking to say, "Oh, maybe Mjolnir can fix me."
I
It's
agree.
like she
Yeah.
went looking to get another type of a cure and just happened to go by where Mjolnir was, and it busted out for her. So
Now, speaking of Mjolnir, I did like the scene. I did like how that. I don't know if that's true to the comics. I don't think it is, but the fragments of it, it could be
That was
broken
cool.
apart. That
Yeah.
was a cool scene. That had a cool factor of
it
9 out
had
of
a
10.
cool factor, but if
Oh,
that
You're
was
not
the
allowed to
case,
enjoy it.
you're not. Because here's the thing. So Thor never ever bothered after Hela destroys the hammer to go back and pick it up, and it's like he couldn't still carry it around. Remember, he's the god of thunder, not the god of hammers. So that's what his dad told him before he died. So and which is another question. What did Thor pick up all the pieces and put it in the little display case for them? How else did they get all the pieces into the display case? That's a question that I want answered. Uh, they just magically went there. What the heck is going on? So
Oh
and at
gosh.
this point, nobody else had been around picking up Thor's hammer. So
You're not allowed to review any more Marvel movies. Even though I agree with you on most of this. That's funny.
Now,
let's talk about this. Let's talk about Jane, Natalie Portman. She's not really cut out to be a comedic actor.
No.
I think she did well in her role. I thought the storyline was compelling, that she was dying of cancer, but it was when she was trying to be funny that I was like, oh man, you really just should be the straight person to Chris Hemsworth's Costello
buffoon.
Yeah. But I do want to give props to her because I think she did a good job, despite the whole comedic part of it. I thought her final scene was good. I mean, honestly, the whole last scene was good. I mean, the idea that I did not put together what Love and Thunder would be until late in the movie. Even Helmsworth was somewhat poignant in his being distraught over her death, and so that was a glimmer of positivity in this movie where there was probably 70% not great. So I do think that the sentient relationship between Mjolnir and Stormbreaker was ridiculous. And when he poured his beer over it, I almost just like looked at my wife and said, "What is going on here?"
It reminded me of, okay, in Solo, right? Lando Calrissian has that robot that's with him all the time, and they have this implication that there's this relationship between Lando and a robot, and we get the same thing going on, you know, and it gets to the point where it's creepy here inside of Thor, you know. I've been watching some of the episodes of The Boys, and the Deep is back in season 3, and there are some pretty creepy scenes with the Deep in season 3. So it's not portrayed quite as bad as what we have in Thor, but or with the Deep, excuse me. But yeah, no, you're right. It was just way too much. I think that if I had the ability that we could take this movie, edit it down to about 30, 40 minutes, and have a really, really good short film. You could keep all the gore scenes, most of the Natalie Portman scenes, add in the Thor scenes that had to be there to connect the scenes, and I think it could be a good movie. But you're going to lose over half of it to get it to be something that makes sense.
Yeah, it's just not the right character for this kind of movie to me. It's no more than Aquaman is, and we had the same complaints about Aquaman. And what makes it worse is that from the very beginning, the Aquaman movie was Jason Momoa trying to be funny, the writing trying to be funny, whereas the first 2 Thor movies were not so, and then the second 2 were under the director here.
Yeah, I have seen some news reports, like at the end, it says that Thor will return, and Chris Hemsworth has acted surprised, as if he's done with Thor. I hope to goodness that he is, because I am sick of Chris Hemsworth as Thor. He can go on and do some other stuff, so I can just ignore it. You know, I don't know why he thinks he's a comedic actor. I've not been into it. I didn't care for Men in Black. I haven't watched Spiderhead yet on Netflix. I don't know, but like some of his television commercials for his brands.
Best comedic performance is Ghostbusters. The one that nobody likes. The all-female Ghostbusters. All-female.
So I didn't see that one.
Oh, it's the best. You're gonna hate it. But
here's the thing. He can do that in something else if it fits the character, or if that's the way that the character is supposed to be.
Yeah.
This is not how Thor is supposed to be.
See, and I think that's where I differ, is because I don't know Thor on the comic book side of things. So I get to make an MCU decision and go, I like this version of Thor better in the movies than I liked in 1 and 2.
Okay.
Because I think as a entertaining character, I'm not entertained by what he gave us in the first 2 Thor movies.
Wow. Okay. I much prefer the first 2 Thor movies over the last 2 Thor movies.
But I don't have a love for the character of Thor in comics. So
I don't particularly love Thor in the comics either. I mean, the character's been around for almost 60 years, and I bet there are maybe 5 good storylines that involve Thor. Yeah. You've got the Straczynski run. You've got the Jason Aaron run, which is really about Jane Foster and not even about Thor. You know, I mean, they're so desperate to do things with Thor. They've given the hammer to other characters like Beta Ray Bill. So like the Simonson run there would be a good run. The character himself is not great, but there are much better Thor stories that they could have made a movie out of than what we got. So, and that's, again, and I'm not like a regular reader of Thor. I have to hear that something was good and go back to it. I'm not going to be buying Thor off the shelf, or I'm putting it on my pull list. So,
yeah. So have they ever, that being said, and I realize that you just said that, have they ever done a version of Thor that is like this version of Thor in the comics?
The closest version in my opinion, was the Ultimate Comics version of Thor.
Okay.
Because he's just this guy who, like, he's drinking all the time, belching all the time, telling people he's a god, but there is no evidence that he's actually a god in the early part of the Ultimate Comics run. And I've only read a handful of those issues because I wasn't reading comics whenever Ultimates was big.
Oh, okay.
So that was just me kind of going back to a few issues and it'd be like, well, that's not really for me. Plus that universe ended anyway.
Right.
So that would be the closest thing to the Thor that we have in the movies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be the Ultimate Thor. And that's, I think, just kind of early on because I don't know what they ultimately did with that character.
What they did.
In the Ultimates. Yeah.
What they ultimately did in
ultimately
the
did with the characters. Yeah. And then I got to mention this too. The complete dismissal of the character Eternity. Eternity in the comics is this, I mean, Infinity Gem level, power level character, and they just turned him into a wishing well, you know. Yeah, it was just, they could have done something better or just not even said it was Eternity and just did something else, you know.
Yeah, I think I asked you off mic about whether that was true to the power set or what Eternity did, and I didn't think it would be. It just, but I mean, visually it was a great. I did like the way the visuals were of that. I mean, with this, you know,
it was close to the visual. It was close on the visual, but just they could have just done something else. They just want to throw out the name Eternity.
And I'm still not sure what made Stormbreaker so special that it could open that door. It was the key to open up the door to get to Eternity, unless it had something to do with the Rainbow Bridge or.
It was. So it's the Rainbow Bridge. So right. So whenever Stormbreaker was forged, remember in Ragnarok by
Peter Dinklage.
Yeah, I was trying to remember his oh gosh, I can't remember what his name was, but I guess they imbibed some power of the Rainbow Bridge into it. So thus, which was, I guess, would have been some of the same power that Heimdall had, but so it could open again. It can travel to wherever it needs to travel to. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Overall, though, I know we're wrapping up this, and we should.
Yeah.
But to me,
you tired of me being negative? Is that what it is?
No, just to me, the better movie would have been Jane Foster's like hero's journey. If they just took Chris Hemsworth out of this movie almost entirely.
And what I'm hoping, and what I'm hoping when they say Thor will return, maybe Natalie Portman will return as Chris Hemsworth won't.
Yeah.
So, I was going to say one more thing about Natalie Portman. The thing about Natalie Portman, in my opinion, she needs a strong director to be really, really good. So, like, when you look at her in, like, the Star Wars movies, George Lucas is not a strong director. So she really was just kind of there. But then there's like some of her earlier movies, like The Professional, which probably, sadly, is probably her best movie, where she had a strong director. Then she's outstanding in that. So I just feel like she was great in the first Thor movie. I thought she was better because you had, oh gosh, I just blanked on his name. Oh, it doesn't matter. But there was a much stronger director for the first Thor movie than Taika Waititi is. So if we get a strong director for another Thor movie that's based on Natalie Portman, as long as there's a strong director, it's got a chance to be really, really good. You're muted, Mike.
Was it Kenneth Branagh or was it Alan Taylor? Yeah.
Kenneth Branagh. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, Branagh.
Yep. All right, grade it. Unless you want me to just keep going, because I will. I will just continue to massacre this movie.
Me? I'll go first.
Go ahead.
Give it a 5.0, which is very good fine. That's generous, I think. But then again, I think they didn't set out to make a movie that I was wanting, and I kind of knew that going in. So it still had some entertaining value to it. But again, if I'm going to value this on the level of balancing out or how much of it was enjoyable, how much of it was cringeworthy, it falls right down in the middle and at a 5.0.
All right, I'm gonna take my headset off whenever Shad gives his grade.
8.0, very fun.
Oh gosh.
I think it's a very I thought the plot was very well put together. I thought that it was the way it was paced was good, and I didn't expect or foresee us getting another Thor movie after Ragnarok. I kind of thought that was the end of the Thor because we're used to trilogies, and that was the third movie, and ta-da, we're done. And then I wasn't going into this one going I want another Thor movie by any means, but what I got was like, okay, that definitely wasn't bad in my opinion, and the way that they left it, the end and wrap up with him with love, I liked. I thought that was a better bow on the present than where we left at the end of Ragnarok. And dumb little note I'm gonna say, I didn't realize the kid's name was Love the entire time. I didn't
I'm
pick
right
up
there
on that.
with you. I did not realize that either.
I didn't know
I think that's what he named her was Love, not
that wasn't Gore's
I don't
original name for her.
I don't think so. I don't think they ever said.
Okay, because I mean, there's usually at least one important fine detail that I miss in every movie or TV show I watch. So I wouldn't have been surprised if it was like, yeah, he called her Love right at the beginning. Then there's not subtitles when you go and see it in the theaters. I'm usually like reading my movies so that I can like pay attention to all the details. But yeah, and I thought Korg and Valkyrie were good supporting cast, and they kind of did a good job with what they did. So yeah, that's what I.
All right, I'm giving this a good plus 2.5. This, in my opinion, I think this is worse. I hate to watch this again just to confirm that it's worse than Aquaman, but I think this is worse than Aquaman. I think this is worse than the first Suicide Squad. If it's not worse, it's right there with those movies. That's how bad I think this one is. Ragnarok was just barely even better than this. So yeah, I can't. I'm just tired of Chris Hemsworth's Thor. I'm so sick of him. I'm ready to see something else.
I mean, I think changing. There's a reason why movies typically stop after 3. Is that you're done with that character, that set, that plot, whatever it is. It's like I think we didn't need a 4th movie, and it is time to move on and change the guard on that one.
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I mean, you think about a series like James Bond. I mean, some of the best James Bond movies. Well, but I mean, when you compare them to like Casino Royale was really, really good, and then like the some of the in between were so. Then No Time to Die comes along, and that one was really, really solid.
Right.
I think.
But you've got different actors. How?
Well, but those were all Daniel Craig. The ones that I talked about.
But that's he only did 3, right?
He did 4. He did Casino Royale, Spectre, something else, right, and No Time to Die. And what was the other one? I don't remember what the other one was, but he did at least 4. And he started late in his career. If he would have started earlier in career, he could have done several more.
Yeah.
But to me, there are even though, like I said before, there aren't that many great Thor stories out there. There are enough Thor stories that they could go through and pull from to make a good Thor movie. And they could do 6 to 10 of them, I think, without too much trouble. The problem that we run into with films is that because they're spread out so much, nobody wants to see a 65-year-old, even
right,
a 65-year-old Chris Evans still running around as Captain America trying to throw the shield and doing all that, So it's more of a time as opposed to a lack of backstories. But I feel like we have these directors who think that they can do better than the comic book writers. And for the most part, when they do, they're wrong. So,
well, and Jason Aaron got a consultant credit on this movie. I saw.
Yeah, I'm sure, and they're going to give anybody who now it's easy for them to throw a name at the end in the credits, So
yeah.
Okay, let's move on because let's talk about something else.
Let's do it.
Well, at the suggestion of Mr. Mike Atchison, we have read Superman and the Authority issues 1 and 4, and then a special Batman Superman Authority special. Is that what it's just called? Batman Superman Authority special? Is that the
yeah.
Okay.
Even though Mike would prefer it to be Superman Batman the Authority special.
Or just leave Batman out of it.
Yeah, that could be it too.
I think we have connection issues here.
Scott's frozen.
Hello, Scott. You're going to have to edit this out.
What happened? It's a horrible picture for him to freeze on too.
Yeah, he's. Well, I don't see that. I see his just his image.
Oh, I gotcha. Oh, I hear him laugh.
Go ahead and start if you can hear me.
Oh, I can hear you now. Okay. So
go ahead and start if you can hear me.
I'll go ahead and I'll read the synopsis for issue 1 of Superman and the Authority, issue 1. Yeah, I already said that. So the synopsis of this is sometimes even Superman finds a task almost impossible. Sometimes even the last son of Krypton needs to enlist help. Some tasks require methods and heroes that don't scream Justice League. So Clark Kent, the Metropolis Marvel, seeks out Manchester Black, the most dastardly of rogues, to form the all-new Authority tasked with taking care of some business on the sly. Not only will Black know the right candidates for the team, but if Superman can make him behave himself and act in service of the greater good, then he'll prove literally anyone can be a hero. They'll have to move quickly, however, as the Ultra Humanite forms his own team to take care of the Man of Steel. That was a long sentence just to say Superman got Manchester Black to help him out.
Yeah, that's basically what happened in the first issue. Is he's, the Action Comics, and I don't know how many issues has been leading up to this, but at some point Philip Kennedy Johnson started writing Action, and this mini-series was to set the stage for this big arc, maybe a year-long arc, where Superman and his cohorts, the Authority, go to Warworld. Superman, to make it to give it a little bit of gravitas, Superman in a previous story had some interdimensional alien or threat kind of attack him and take away some of his powers. That was with his son, Jonathan Kent. And anyway, even Jonathan had some sort of premonition that he wouldn't survive, but that's why he has this look of the gray temples and his powers are reduced. The costume itself, or the outfit he's wearing, I think is awesome. I love that short sleeve. I love the black background on the sort of like Kingdom Come style. But yeah, that's the lead up, and this whole issue was basically him getting this former, I think Manchester Black came from Justice League Elite. He's like one of the top 5 telepaths in the world, and he's really a narcissistic a-hole.
Yeah.
But that's what makes him interesting. He's kind of like John Constantine, except worse.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty much the whole plot of the first issue. But it's got that Morrisonian flair. I mean, and that's throughout this series. Not to spoil the rest of my thoughts on this, but Morrison hit all the right spots with me on this 4-issue series.
Yeah, I was on the opposite end, and I was just like, this doesn't feel like Grant Morrison at his finest. It just felt like I felt like I was like he was going through the motions of it. But I will preface it that I don't read a lot of Superman. I'm not a big Superman person, and it kind of felt like, oh, I'd rather. Actually, when we get to the special, I enjoyed Philip Kennedy Johnson's writing 100 times better than I enjoyed Grant Morrison's writing. I was like, man, this is and I'm assuming Philip Kennedy Johnson's quite a bit like he's a newer comer to everything. Is he a younger guy?
I think so. I don't know exactly what his history is, but he's done really well with the overall Action Comics run that he's
done. I enjoyed his when he picked up on that special a lot more than I was kind of getting bored with Morrison's stuff a little bit.
Morrison, I mean, if you've read much of his stuff, he can be really I don't know. He's cerebral, drug-induced, plot, writing, everything. And I'm not saying drug-induced in a bad way, but there are stories.
Oh, yeah.
you know, he does. He was more accessible in this 4-issue series than I've read him in a long time. If you've ever read Final Crisis, I mean, I'm still trying to put that together. It's so deep. So I've read his Green Lantern. I read the first season of Green Lantern, The Green Lantern. It was too off the wall for me for the second season for me to continue on to it. But I thought this was accessible, and maybe you had to be. If you what you're saying, Shad, is that you like that style, or you like more Morrison than what was given here, then I get that, because I don't think this was his over the top stuff.
No.
I just think it was more. It was, to me, it was more. Oh, this okay. I can relate to this. I can see this happening.
The problem I had with this series was that the whole series feels like it's let's get the band together. That's like what the entire 4 issues was about.
Yeah, it's like a 0 issue, one big 0 issue. But I think it's done now. If you have just any old writer on this, it's going to be, well, I just wasted $15 or $20 on a 0 issue. But I'm telling you, there were more enjoyable moments in this story than I couldn't even write down. My pros and cons column just became a pro column, and more pros. I didn't have really any
extra
cons.
pro.
Yeah, I didn't have any. I mean, everything from, like I said, this is an older, wiser Superman. He's just trying to guide the ship. I like that aspect of him. He's not Clark Kent, having Batman tell him every damn move to make. He's got the cool Kingdom Come-esque costume. Manchester Black is a great anti-hero. I just think he's fantastic. I think the composition.
I feel like he belongs more in The Boys than he does in DC Comics.
Maybe, but do you really want this? To me, is like a breath of fresh air. This isn't your same 7 Justice Leaguers. I mean,
right.
This is the idea. He's coming up with a team that can do some stuff that the old guard
said
really
they wouldn't
can't.
do. Yeah,
that they can't do or they won't do. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I was excited about this, so that's why I can talk more about it. But I want to hear what. I mean, that's the first issue synopsis. You wanted to go on the second one then?
Absolutely. Shad? Yeah. Issue 2, Clark Kent and Manchester Black continue to put Superman's new team together, even though keeping Black in check seems like just as difficult a job as convincing the new recruits to come along. The pair hits different parts of the world looking for different types of heroes, while Midnighter, Apollo, and Natasha Irons only need to tie up some loose ends before getting on board. The Enchantress is going to be a little harder. Superman is going to have to set her free from a deadly illusion hell-bent on destroying her before she can help him save the universe.
Yeah, so this was probably the weakest issue for me, I think, of the 4. I mean, good visuals, all this stuff with Enchantress being in hell was in her head. We'll see that in the beginning of issue 3. But Midnighter and Apollo are a good team, are a good pair to bring into the story with the power set. Remembering, Superman's recruiting this team for a specific purpose. So
right.
I can't remember any specific anecdotes or any scenes in here that I wanted to speak about, but I thought this was sort of a slower issue, but it was still pretty good.
I like the introduction of Natasha Irons. I haven't read anything with her in that, but I like her as a character, and this was kind of my first exposure to her.
Yeah, she's the new Steel.
Yeah, she's the new Steel. Okay. Not new. I mean, the character's been around, I bet, 15 years. Okay. In fact, this is the point where Scott will look up on the internet when her first appearance was. I'll beat him to it. Maybe. First appearance was no.
Who's gonna get it?
Well, I'm only seeing the original Steel, not
Action Comics Volume 2, number 7. So it's 2012.
Okay.
When she first appeared.
That New 52.
That was New 52. Yeah.
Okay.
And she.
So something good that came out of New 52.
Yeah. She's the son of John Henry Irons, which was one of the alternate Superman characters.
I thought she was the niece of him.
Is it niece?
Well, she calls him uncle, doesn't she?
Oh yeah, she does.
Uncle John.
You know what? That's right. In my head, though, she's always been his daughter. But okay.
Well, maybe
But I think she's a much more interesting character than her uncle.
Yeah, yeah, I would definitely agree.
We need to tell Scott to get the hamsters on that wheel again to get his internet going.
Spin up that internet.
Yeah.
All right, we'll go to issue
And
3.
he's recording too, so hard telling how this is turning out.
Ooh, good point. Issue 3. Superman puts the Authority back together. But why? What threat is out there that only this group can contend with? The Ultrahumanite, of course. This fearsome foe is forming a team of his own, one designed to go fist to fist with the Authority. It will be their baptism in battle to prove if Superman is right, that regardless of who we are, there is a hero lurking inside of the worst of us. This penultimate issue is an important chapter in the new Superman mythos, helping to set up where Clark Kent goes next and who he goes with. Yep. Sound about right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if this is the issue where they introduced or actually didn't introduce. It's been around a while, but Superman has this supermobile that was introduced back in the 70s, late 70s.
Okay.
And it's basically something he used whenever he was depowered. But there was a couple of good scenes in there that talked about it. Have you heard of the Ultrahumanite?
No, I hadn't.
You were hearing references to this throughout the series, but he was the first true super villain of Superman.
Oh, okay.
He was kind of a mad scientist, but throughout the years he evolved to be a guy that he traded out his consciousness, whether physically with the brain exchange or cloning or some other electronic way of trading bodies. So his whole idea was he survived all these years is actually him. He's everything. He was a woman, Dolores Winters in the All-Star Squadron. He's been I think the most famous version is this kind of albino gorilla that you see towards the end of this series. But what makes it interesting in issue 3 is that he took on the body of one of the Solomon Grundy incarnations.
Yes.
Which he regenerates. If he dies, he comes back. Usually has a little bit different consciousness, but somehow, some way, Ultrahumanite took over Solomon Grundy, who really can't be destroyed, and until he was with, and I can't remember if this is issue 3 or not, but I think it was White Kryptonite. Was that in issue 3 where the Lois saved the day, or was that issue 4?
Those 3, Scott says.
Yeah, the faceless Scott.
Yep.
I'm glad to hear you're here, buddy. So yeah, I really like that too, because White Kryptonite's sort of obscure. It's a kryptonite that only works against plants, and Solomon Grundy is a plant-based character. He's born in the swamp. So anyway, I rambled on. Scott or Shad, you want to comment on this one?
I just want to say one thing before my internet drops again. That I actually thought issue 2 there was more happening in issue 2 than some of the other issues, because we had the whole story, trying to resolve what was going on with the Enchantress. So, and then I think I had one note on. I didn't realize till they just flat out said it that the Ultrahumanite had taken over Solomon Grundy's body. It wasn't obvious to me in the first two issues that was the case. So.
Yeah, I mean, even with this is sort of the dumbed down version of Morrison. Nothing's really obvious. You have to kind of know the history of these characters and know by inference. I mean, there's even some reference to Haven. Did you see that? Where the is that in issue 4 or 3 where one of the villains that they fight that sort of also calls themselves the Authority. Is that, if that's in 4, I'll stop. But
that was in 3, and it was actually Lois Lane, and the White Kryptonite is in 4.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So there's the
Authority, old Authority versus the new Authority is how I
right. Yeah. Yeah. Civ is a character from the Haven, and that was a 9 or 10 issue run in the 90s, right after Morrison started JLA, his run on that. and Haven was basically an alien ship that crash landed in California and pretty much destroyed an entire town. But you see these references when she's talking about that she's trying to draw attention to what happened to her people at Haven. So if you didn't have that knowledge, you won't really get you. This is again, Morrison, you got to like look up his whatever he's talking about. If it doesn't make sense, you got to look it up and go, oh,
he's not giving you editor's notes to be like,
no, that's where, yeah. It's too bad that you can't, they don't do that these days with these editors and say, see issue so-and-so or whatever. So what about you, Shad? Is it more the same then?
Yeah, more of the same. As I'm kind of going through, I was looking back to go, okay, because they keep saying the Authority and it's kind of the getting the band back together. But I was like, who was in the original Authority? So I was looking that up while you guys were talking, and just kind of, because I remember reading like the first couple issues of the Authority, the original one, but not really sinking into it too much. So of the group that we have, Apollo and Midnight are really the only two original Authority members. Is that right?
Right.
And they were also part of a different team, right? Or were they always the Authority?
I can't tell you much about that until they. Well, it was Wildstorm before DC absorbed Wildstorm.
And was Wildstorm just the Authority before the Authority?
That was the company. I don't know if it was. I don't know much about it except maybe Planetary. Did that fall into that too, Scott?
I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, that's some uncharted territory for me. I just know whenever they kind of became part of DC proper, I started becoming more familiar with those characters of
Stormwatch. That was the other one I was thinking
Stormwatch. That's right. Yeah.
That's right. What I was thinking of. Okay. I finally found the right thread to follow to get.
Yeah. The other characters are new. This OMAC is not the OMAC that we're familiar with. No version I've seen. Not the futuristic Jack Kirby OMAC, and not the Infinite Crisis robots that were controlling the world. Light Ray again is also, that's a New Gods name, a New Gods character, but this is a totally different character born on Mars from a different universe, different parallel universe. So again, she's like it's just a new character for me. Enchantress is probably the most well-known and most established, probably been around the longest of all of these characters.
And the other thing, for some reason, I don't remember it. And you're right. There's not everything's called out directly, but the Ultra Humanite wasn't necessarily like this is that. And I went to I was thinking it was Brainiac the entire time because it was like brains and moving them around.
And when when I seen the green captions, I knew Brainiac had to be behind this. Those little angular things.
Yes.
And he turned out to be. So I thought that was kind of cool too. I just this isn't meant to be, I didn't really intend to do a deep dive, but just a review. I thought this was, I wanted you guys to experience it, whether you like it or not. It's a whole different story. But and I honestly, I haven't reread the Batman Authority special. It's a whole different story, and I'll let you guys talk about that because it's been a while since I've read it.
Well, I'll do the synopsis for issue 4. I think we're on now.
Oh, that's right. Yep.
Or 3. What are we on?
4.
Okay, thanks. Synopsis is the team ready for what's next? Will the Man of Steel's new supergroup fall apart before they even begin? The Ultra Humanite has put together his own team of rogues designed to match the Authority fist for fist. This series comes to an explosive conclusion that will threaten the split of the Man of Steel in half.
You can tell this is a DC promotional.
Oh, absolutely.
Synopsis. Yeah. I mean, again, if anyone's going to fault it for something, it's going to be that this was a 4-issue promotional, 0 issue.
Yeah. Yeah, but I actually, the way that this wrapped up, I kind of went, Well, that wasn't a lot that happened in 4 issues, and it kind of seemed like we could have done it in less time, and the special that we get into next had a lot more story in it that I felt like could have been split out into more. But maybe it does. The special definitely felt like it was leading us into things that are gonna happen in events in the future. I definitely felt like issue 0 vibes and that kind of thing, like you're saying, is that this is just giving you a taste of what's to come.
I think it's one of those deals where you read something because the story's good, not because it accomplishes anything. It doesn't move the needle necessarily, but because it's told so well. I mean, I didn't even bring up the art. Mikhail Hanin and Travel Foreman. I mean, 2 of the better artists you're going to find, especially Hanin. I love his real crisp art style. But they put a lot into this, and I thought it was enjoyable for just the not that it really moved a story or you had this big outcome, but that it was told well.
Definitely.
Scott's still on no video, so it must mean he's barely on.
Holding on. I'll do the synopsis for the special then. Okay. So this is the Batman Superman Authority Special number 1. Following Mongols' brazen attack on Earth, Superman's world has been turned upside down. Conflict between Atlantis and the surface world, the discovery of an immensely powerful new element, dead refugees with mysterious ties to Krypton, an explosion from the Justice League. When Superman reforms the experimental anti-establishment Authority to join him in liberating War World, Batman comes to them with a request. Join him for one unorthodox, off-the-books mission first, one that he could never ask the Justice League to be part of, and one he doesn't expect everyone to come back from.
Yes, this is just another shameless. I think it was a good story. What I remembered about it was a good story, but this, if anything, was a shameless cash grab because he threw Batman on the front of it and got more people to buy this.
Well, the big issue with this is that they forgot to tell the artist that, hey, this is supposed to be an aged up Superman, and you just have like the regular Superman without the sideburns, without the gray on the side. There needed to be better editorial for this story.
Yep, I noticed that too, and that to me that just tells me that's where comics these days, there's not much editorial guiding or guidance. It's kind of a shame because that's what you need it for. And that wouldn't take much. It's just a coloring change. It's not even repenciling.
So this is, like I said, this is when Philip Kennedy Johnson takes over writing, and so he's writing the Action Comics book all this time, right? Like that's
right.
Okay.
Yep.
So he's probably got the full idea of what's happening, the full thread line of what War World is and all that, and Morrison's just kind of picking up this is really kind of his.
And I think that's why the Morrison story seems so disconnected from the story overall. He knew the basic reason for this, but he hasn't been writing the actual main storyline.
He just knew where he needed to end up in order for it to make sense for everything else. That makes sense.
Yep.
I don't think I've ever seen an image of Midnighter and Batman face to face like I did in that comic. I thought that was kind of a cool, nose to nose of them kind of arguing in that, and I really liked. I like Ben Templesmith's artwork, so his when he was taking over the Shadow Earth, and they were going back and forth between those two things. I thought that was a good fit for kind of this ugly kind of world, and he's got this real rough style that he has in his artwork. I thought that was a cool fit. It was a nice wrap up in 42 pages. I thought I wrote down, but could have totally been a bigger story if they wanted to expand that.
Right.
And the introduction of the Empire of Shadows instead of just the League of Shadows in its own little world was cool, and I hope they pick it up again. But that doesn't seem to be in any of this, like in the War World going forward. Doesn't look like. I was reading ahead because I was like, Oh, Empire of Shadows sounds kind of cool. And I was digging through, like, did Batman pick up Empire of Shadows for anything? No, it's nowhere. This came out at the beginning of the year, and they haven't touched the Empire of Shadows at all. They introduced it and dropped it.
Yeah, I would think that they would expand on that someday, but they
Right.
haven't so far. And Philip Kennedy Johnson, he's kind of a younger writer. He's just I'm trying to see what some of the work he's done. He doesn't have his own Wikipedia page yet, so he hasn't quite made it. But I've really enjoyed his stuff, and it's definitely a fresh look at the Superman mythos. And Last God, this is what
I saw that.
he did that Black Label. He did Captain America run, some Alien stuff. Yeah, Gotham City Villains, Red Sonja, 007. Oh, did he do one of them that we? Oh no, that's coming in. Oh, that's right. That's the
He's on the
one
new
coming
one?
out next month. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the new 007 run.
Is this Fugonaut something that we're supposed to recognize?
Fugonaut in the Batman
In the
special?
Batman special, yeah, Batman Superman Authority special.
I want to say yes.
The robot that was supposed to be able to allow them to go to Earth Prime, which is why they were doing this mission, was to take it out. It looks familiar, but I don't know if
Tempest Fugonaut. Yes, he's the guy with that funny head, kind of a headgear look with the horns and stuff. Is that what you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's this robot looking thing that is.
Yeah.
That
he was in
has.
Oh god, he played a role in the Dark Multiverse, the whole Scott Snyder thing,
okay,
which I just don't
do it.
No. Yeah, the only reason I did read it until I just couldn't stand it, but I read whatever that series that after Heroes in Crisis, and Wally West somehow was in Metron's Mobius chair, and he had these new powers or something. The Fugonaut was there, Tempest Fugonaut. So he is some sort of, I don't know, to put it in Marvel terms, somewhat of a watcher or some omnipotent type character that sits from afar.
Yes, he's tasked with preventing intrusions from other universes, especially from the dark universe to the normal one.
Okay, so he's the he's the guardian of dark multiverse coming over into the regular multiverse. Okay,
yes.
They can just get rid of that whole dark multiverse. It just gives me a headache.
Is that the underside of the map of the 52 universes?
Yeah. How clever. I mean, infinite is infinite, right? I mean,
right. Yeah.
Come on, you can say you've got the universe, the multiverse, and the omniverse, and now we've got a opposite. And even it's just come on, you're just wearing this out terribly.
Yes.
So, anyway, you guys' thoughts on this overall 4-issue series plus the special? Oh, Scott, he just texted his grade. Well, it didn't. Well, let's look at the chat. In case I cannot say my grade, I give it a 6.0 fine. Too much just getting the band together. If the main story is good, my grade could go up. Okay, so that's his.
I agree with that. I would give it probably a fine plus. Yeah, the special did it for me. I felt like, and that gives me hope for the main storyline because that's the writer that we get in the main storyline. Yeah. It felt like there was a, like you said, Morrison didn't really necessarily have to drive anything home. It could feel a little disconnected on purpose. And I'm interested in what the main War World storyline goes on with Philip Kennedy Johnson for sure. So I'd say 6.5 fine plus.
Okay. And that's that. In a way, that's fair. A lot of it's the eye of the beholder on this series and your experience. So for me, it's I can't even say. I'm gonna have to say 9.0, very fine / near mint. It's not perfect, but for me, for a fan like me, it hit all the right spots. So to me, I'd rather have that than even if it was like I said, it just was an introduction, and it was sometimes that was my favorite Justice League stories. It was the ones where they got together in the satellite and they said, this is just some procedural stuff, or we're going to talk about this. Nothing really happened. I mean, X-Men were good for that too, but
Oh yeah.
This wasn't a bombastic story. It had some good classic villains in it. And I didn't really see much in the way of flaws, so I'm going to stick with my 9.0.
Cool.
And you're right. I think you'll enjoy. If you want to see Superman at his most Supermanish, you read this Action Comics run.
Yeah.
And he really does show why he's the primo superhero. I've been reading these month to month, but I want to read them all together when they're all out. I'll probably buy this if it comes out in some sort of a couple of trades or a big hardcover or something. Yep. So that's it for me. I feel kind of like our captain.
There he is.
Our captain fell off the ship.
Feels he's shaking.
Come on.
Okay. So I got an issue of Power Pack here. So Power Pack issue 49, and again, I keep coming across the same handful of titles because that's what most of my collection is.
I think he just didn't want to talk about this story because all of a sudden he's got a great internet connection.
I'm going fast because it's been real spotty.
Okay.
So I've heard everything. I just turn off the video, try to preserve.
Okay.
It
there you go. Yeah.
But this is a series I have in my collection just because I stopped reading the series by issue 49. I probably only made it like 20, 30 issues actually into the series, buying it off the shelf. But I've gone back and picked it all up with the intent of reading the entire series from start to finish at some point in the future. But this is after Louise Simonson had left writing and John Bogdanov have taken over not only the pencils but also the writing on the series.
Okay. Let me go. Go ahead, Shad.
Ooh, Vertigo Quarterly, issue 2. This is the CMYK quarterly that they did back in 2014. They had just 4 issues that came out once every quarter. This is the magenta issue, and there was just some really cool artsy kind of stuff that was in here. They're listing Peter Milligan as the writer, though I remember there being a lot of different artists and a lot of different writers in here. They only have one writer, one artist, which is odd. But I enjoyed these. I thought it was a cool, just kind of, they didn't keep going and go the next year's version of this. It was just, hey, we've got an idea. We're going to do the color palettes and we're going to write some stories that either have the color heavily based in it, or maybe, if it was cyan, there was some like maybe a depressing story because someone was feeling blue in a way, and so it was kind of just, the assignment was probably, here's your thing, do however you want, and just kind of let people roll with it. And this was, I think they only did it 2 different years. They did 2 different series of quarterlies through Vertigo that were kind of in this very random kind of artsy kind of way, but I enjoyed it. It was a cool little thing.
All right. Shake, shake, shake. Ooh, we got a classic here. From 1964. This is Flash Volume 1, number 148. And it features on the cover Captain Boomerang. And Captain Boomerang is there's a boomerang-shaped bridge, but anyway, he's being chased by the Flash, and he says, "So long, Flash. In another instant, my boomerang bridge will blast off and carry you into an endless orbit around the Earth." And it was, like I said, it was written or published in November 1964. Writers John Broome, penciled by Carmine Infantino, and it's just one of those classic Silver Age books. I've got other than some of the big ones, I've got a pretty full run of the Flash, and Yeah, you really can't go wrong with the Silver Age Flash. That's really, to me, the classic one.
Nice.
Yeah. Looks like I bought it for $10 in 2019.
Wow, you've got that much detail in there? You got what you paid for it and everything?
Yeah, and when I put it, I was entering it in.
Yeah.
And now it's a 5.5 copy, at least by my grading.
Mm-hmm.
So, yep. Okay. Well, I don't know who's going to send us off if Scott can't talk. Scott, can you talk?
It will be very.
Okay, so Chad, I'm going to leave it to you. You've got the more sonorous voice.
All
You
right,
need to do
so
the outro.
our just next up, if you're following along, episode 136, we're going to be covering the full series of Miss Marvel. That's on Disney Plus. All 6 episodes are out, so watch them before the next episode drops if you want to follow along with our review. As well as we're going to be covering the first volume, or issues 1 through 5 of the series 40 Seconds, which you can find on Comixology. And if you want to follow along with my activities, you can follow me at on Facebook at Shad Schubert. That's ShaadSchubert. Mike, what about you?
Well, mine's simple. It's m.atchison90@gmail.com. I've got social presence, but I really don't put it out there quite like some people do. I don't know if Scott can give his, or if we need to tell the whole.
I'm Scott Reed. You can find me at burgcomics.com, burgcomics.com. And don't forget to try to make it to Buddy Monster Comics this Saturday for the Power Rangers and Buddy Monster Comics Con 2022. And we'll talk to you again on episode 136. Bye.
So we ready to start? You got it. Everybody got their drinks? Everybody got their... I got my herbal tea. I got my cherry vanilla just soda stream, and I've got my honey lemon ginger tea as well. So what you got, Chad? Brewdog. Yep. All right. A little place out of Ohio. Well, I guess they actually started in Scotland, but they have a... It's an IPA? This is a Hoppy Golden, it says. Okay, Hoppy Golden. Tastes good. All right. Yeah, you guys gotta get liquored up to stand to be around me, talk to me for 2 hours. Mine's non-alcoholic. Oh, okay. With it being hoppy, that kind of throws me. Mine's making up for his. It's non-alcoholic. I mean, why bother? All right. We ready? I'm ready to start this nonsense. Let's do it. Okay.